Hey guys, I've gone live lots of times where I thought it was nonsense I was doing, and I always said it was, or at least, I would say this is nonsense. For once, I'm going live and just talking, but it's not nonsense. So listen in if you like. Here goes. I just made like some mental, theoretical, but also applying to actual playing and music breakthroughs today. Look forward to some different kind of music and added to me, not nothing taken away from what I've already done and do, but adding to it. I've got understanding of things that just dawned on me today, things I'd read and studied about but didn't put together till today, on my walk actually, which is where I do a lot of my best thinking and creating and writing and whatever, but today it was thinking. I can try to explain it, and that might be cool. But I don't want to go too far, but I don't want to not go far enough either. So I'm just going to play this by ear here, so to speak. Okay, I'm giving credit where credit's due. I don't plagiarize. If I get an idea and it's totally my own, I'll say that. But if I got it, even if I put two ideas together and the result is my own, I document the two sources that I put together, because I'm above board. Plus, anybody can Google anything these days anyway, so that's the best way to do it, even if I weren't as honest as I try to be. Anyway, the two sources. John Mehegan, Mehegan, wrote a book called Jazz Improvisation, Tonal and Rhythmic Principles, and he laid out something he called the 60 chord system, where he said for jazz you have 5 chords that are basically used, but you have 12 roots to put them on, so you have 60, which is 12 times 5 chords. And he named out what the 5 types of chords were. And of course, you can play any melody. For the melody, you can play any of the 12 notes of the chromatic scale. So he said you have a 60 chord system, which over that you play a chromatic line, because every note's possible in jazz. But the 5 chords is important too. He said the 5 types of chords are major. Jazz only uses 4 note chords and above, and more than 4 and up number of notes in chords usually. So 4 notes that have 4 notes are called 7th chords, because 1, 3, 5, 7 is 4 notes, and the 5 types of 7th chords that he says can be on each single note or root, and then there's of course 12 of each of those. The 5 are major 7th chord, minor 7th chord, dominant 7th chord, half diminished 7th chord, which is also called minor 7th flat 5, and diminished 7th chord. So those are the 5 types of chords, and since you have 12 notes, there's 60 chords possible, because each of the 5 chords can start on any one of the 12 notes, and then a chromatic line is played over that. And then parallel to that, I'm going to do it in 2 parts. So far I'm doing the jazz thing. I'll do classical in a second. Parallel to that, Pat Martino, Martino, great jazz guitarist, came up in the 80s with a system where he wrote it. It stated it in Guitar World or Guitar Player magazine. So I'm documenting my source. If you take John Mehegan and add Pat Martino, here's what you get. Pat Martino said that I'm going to add one thing to Pat Martino, but I'm going to give him the credit as if he did it all, because what the heck. Pat Martino said, anytime you take a diminished 7th chord, which is 4 notes, but they're symmetrical, minor third, minor third, minor third, minor third. There's 4 notes in a diminished 7th chord, and they're all symmetrical. And if you start with that, that's a diminished 7th chord, and flat any of the notes in it, any one of the 4 notes just get flatted by 1/2 step, you get a dominant 7th chord. And then if you take the same diminished 7th chord and sharp it any one of the 4 notes in it, you get a minor 7 flat 5 chord. He didn't say that, but I'm adding that. So basically you have diminished 7th in the middle. If you flat any note in it, you get a dominant 7th chord. If you sharp any note in it, you get a minor 7 flat 5 chord, and then in the middle you have a diminished 7th chord. So that gives you 3 types of chord per root, or at least 3 types of. Love you. It gives you 3 types of chords, and then if you add to that the other 2 types of 7th chords that are in a major scale, which is the minor 7th chord and the major 7th chord, you get the 5 chords that are possible. Start with Pat Martino, diminished seventh, flat a note, you get a dominant seventh, sharp a note, you get a minor seventh flat 5, plus you add the minor seventh and the major seventh. That gives you 1, 2, 3, 5 chords that are possible, given 4-note chords. And then since there's 12 notes in a chromatic scale, that's 5 times 12. 5 times 12 is 60 possible chords, and there's 12 notes in a chromatic scale that can be played over that. So all I did was combine John Mahagan and Pat Martino, and now I got this new system where anywhere I am, I can play a diminished seventh chord, flat one of the notes and get a dominant seventh chord, sharp one of the notes and get a minor seventh flat 5 chord, giving me 3 of the 5 types of seventh chords used in jazz. And then if I want a major seventh chord, I can play that. If I want a minor seventh chord, I can play that. It all makes sense. Now that's for jazz, because that was 4-note chords. Now let's do classical, which is basically 3-note chords, or what's called triads. Same principle, but a little simpler, but same idea. But John Mahagan didn't say this part. I'm adding this. In classical, you have 3-note chords, and the symmetrical 3-note chord is called an augmented chord. Major third, major third, major third. Now, John Mahagan said, you take an augmented triad, they're called, because they're 3-note chords. Tri means 3. Get an augmented triad. Flat any one of the notes, you get a major triad. Sharp any one of the notes, you get a minor triad. So basically, if you start with an augmented triad, you have flat one of the notes, you get a major triad. Sharp one of the notes, you get a minor triad. So that gives you augmented, major, and minor triad. Then add the other type of triad that's in a major scale, which is the diminished triad. That gives you the 4 types of triads that are possible: augmented, major, minor, and diminished. Now the 4 possible triads, I'm going to do John Mahagan now, but he didn't do this. That's how many, in for the classical, how many chords would you have total? Well, you have 4 types of triad. You have 12 possible notes that each triad can have a root can have as their root. That gives you 12 times 4, which is 48 possible chords. And then, of course, I'll just say for the sake of argument that you can play any of the 12 chromatic notes over those 48 chords as well in classical, because classical music doesn't really stick to just the major triad or harmonic minor triad. Mozart and all kinds of people would go all over the place with that. They really just used all 12 notes, but used the 48 chord system because they have the 4 types of triad and 12 notes. It can be played, each of them can be played on, so 12 times 4 is 48. It's a 48 chord system with a chromatic scale played over it. That's my additions to Pat Martino and also John Mahagan applied to jazz music and also applied to classical music. So that's the new system I have. I'm going to be using that when I play chords and leads, because leads can use arpeggios, which is chords played in as a melody, notes of a chord played as a melody. It'll change my chord playing because now I know what I'm doing, and plus I added a bunch of chords and stuff. And I think it's really cool. I already went in the Guitar Center and almost sounded like somebody else today, but it's still me. But when I added that knowledge of combining Pat Martino and John Mahagan, I got this new understanding. It's not so important what your approach to guitar is as so much as whether it makes sense to you. My approach makes sense to me and works. Somebody else may think I'm nuts and doesn't work. Whatever works for you. And if anybody likes what I'm saying, use it in your own music, fine. I did some, John Mahagan did some, Pat Martino did some, put them all together, you have my new theory. Love you guys, peace, rock and roll.